So my first sleeper, my favorite QB, is Cole McDonald out of Hawaii. He's started for only 2 years, so I think that is one of the knocks on him. But he's thrown for nearly 8,000 yards in those 2 years, 69 TDs to 24 interceptions, and he has 11 rushing touchdowns. He can run. He doesn't run a ton, but he's got some pretty decent wheels. Now, this program was in some really bad times a few years before he came around. This year led them to a 10-win season, a bowl win, went to the Mountain West Championship. The year before, they won 8 games. And yes, he is playing some weaker competition in the Mountain West, but against big teams, he played well. This year against Arizona, threw for 400 yards, 70% completion rate, 4 TDs. The only weakness was 4 interceptions, which I think that is one of the things he needs to work on, is not forcing the ball. Against Oregon State, again, Pac-12 competition, 421 yards, 4 TDs. Air Force, great defense, 400 yards on them. And the bowl game against a pretty good BYU squad, nearly 500 yards and 4 TDs. And the year before, threw for 6 against the strong Navy team, and against powerhouse San Diego State, 450 yards and 3 TDs. The first thing I'm going to talk about in McDonald is his arm. He's got an absolute cannon, and that's probably his biggest strength. At times, he may rely on a little too much, throwing the deep ball all the time, and the low percentage throws that comes of throwing deep hurt his production a little bit, but overall, it's a really nice throw. One thing I really like specifically about when he throws deep is you see he hangs that ball up there. He throws a nice little rainbow. Not only is it just a pretty throw in my opinion, but he gives his receivers time to get down there, and they can catch that ball in stride. They don't have to dive for it or anything, and they can take it straight in for a tutty. And the other thing you see is on a lot of these throws, it's going straight over the defender's head. He's really good at his placement in regards to where the defenders are, and that leads into the next thing I like about him. He likes throwing between defenders, and he's good at making a lot of pretty throws fitting straight into tight windows. Sometimes that's with pressure coming, as you'll see. He throws it hard a lot of times to get in there, but also he has a nice soft touch on it sometimes, depending on what he needs, where the defender is, where the receiver is, what he needs to do to get it right in the receiver's hands. So maybe in this strength there's a little bit of a knock because he makes some risky throws, and some of these, if he's not careful, may turn into picks in the NFL. But anyways, that leads me into probably my 2 favorite throws he's made. His first one is just a nice raindrop, soft touch on a deep ball right over the head of the defender. Couldn't have been any closer, and it hits the receiver's hands perfectly in stride for a touchdown. That's in a bowl game, by the way, and one that ended up being very close. Now this one, if you don't think it's pretty, then you just don't know football. Throws it across the field, which is so hard to do. It's so long of a distance, and he does it between defenders. And this is specifically one of the toughest routes to make, as it's similar to the 18 to 20 yard out. And it's so hard on that route to not either overthrow it or to underthrow it and give up a big pick six. This is a route that even NFL QBs struggle with. And you can see he places it right on his receiver's shoulder. Couldn't have been any better placement. Now, one potential skill that McDonald could develop further in the NFL is his running ability, which is definitely becoming more prominent among NFL quarterbacks. He's not a primary runner, but he's got some wheels. He definitely has some speed, and he's got a nice big frame that will help him fight through some contact. What you'll see in a lot of his runs is he's not looking for huge gains, but he's just good at picking up pressure and taking an underrated little 8 to 10 yard gain to the sideline, not forcing anything, and he keeps the chains moving. One of these runs on the surface may not seem too important, but every yard really matters, and it's much better than the alternative of taking a sack or throwing an incompletion, or worst of all, throwing an interception. The last thing I'm going to address about McDonald, as I got into a little bit earlier, is he turned this program around and he's delivered some big wins. Here's 2 great throws in the bowl game with the game on the line, and he shows some ice in his veins. He's definitely got confidence in himself, and I mean, you probably have to if you're going to wear hair like that. But you definitely see that confidence with some of the risky but fantastic passes he's made, and it's worked out in college, and I don't see why it can't work out in the NFL. The next guy in this video is probably the most well-known. That's A.J. Dillon, running back out of Boston College. Despite big success at a big school, he's still relatively unloved in the draft process so far, though a good 40 at the combine helped his stock a little. Dillon had a great freshman season in 2017, putting up 1,600 yards, ranking second in the ACC, and also had 14 touchdowns. But what's even more impressive is he did it virtually all in the second half of the season. In Week 7 against Louisville, he emerged with 275 yards and 4 touchdowns, and he finished the season with 1,260 more yards and 12 TDs, and his yards during that span led the country. In that time, he had 6 150-plus yard games and 4 games of nearly 200 yards or more. The next year, in just 10 games as a sophomore, he still eclipsed 1,100 yards. And as a junior last year, he put up 1,700 yards, ranking first in the ACC, sixth in the country, and had 14 touchdowns once again. His best games last year, 250 yards against Syracuse and 3 touchdowns, and 225 more and 3 more touchdowns against NC State. In his career, he finished with 2,100-yard games and 6 games of 190 plus. He also had 40 total touchdowns and nearly 4,400 yards, which ranked 4th in ACC history. The first thing you're going to notice about Dylan is he's an absolute bull. He's not shy of contact, and he runs straight through people. His build is 6 foot, 245 pounds, similar to Saquon, and you're not stopping him if he gets some momentum going. He's not going to have a lot of negative carries at all because it's just near impossible to take him down on first contact. And even after that, you're probably still going to need about 3 guys at least to take him down. Good luck tackling him clean one-on-one. If he gets a good O-line, it's probably over because he hits that hole pretty quickly, and DBs aren't winning a one-on-one with this guy. Some of his runs are reminiscent of a prime Marshawn Lynch, just straight throwing tacklers off him to the ground. Think the playoff clincher against the New Orleans Saints. You know you have respect when a player has an angle on you, and instead he runs backwards and goes for the trip rather than head-on contact, which you see here. And that's what I think a lot of DBs are going to have to do in the NFL if Dylan plays his cards right. Dylan's biggest asset is his strength, but he has plenty of other skills too. He's got some nice little jukes to throw the defense off just a little bit, and he's got a nice spin move that he uses both to avoid tackles and to break out of them. He has a decent stiff arm as well, in addition to being able to just run straight through guys. He has very good speed for his size as well. Running a 4.53 at 245 pounds is no joke. The one thing Dylan will need to work on is the passing game, as you don't see a lot of catches in his highlights. When he does, they tend to be screen passes rather than real routes. Think of the impact the new generation of running backs such as Kamara, Saquon, and CMC have had in the passing game. As a player looking for extra opportunities early, another way he can get some love from the coaches is proving he can pass block, and Dylan definitely has potential with his strength. He put up 23 reps on the bench at the combine, not to mention his numerous runs throwing guys right onto the ground. And at 245 pounds, he's about the same size as some of the guys he'll have to block, but with a big height advantage. The next 2 guys in this video are small school wide receivers, starting with Antonio Gandy Golden of Liberty. This season, Golden put up 80 receptions for 1,400 yards, ranking 4th in the country, 10 TDs, and despite a high number of catches, still averaged nearly 18 yards per reception. The year before, despite having to adjust in his first season at the FBS level, he still managed to put up 70 receptions for 1,000 yards and 10 TDs, including 2 200-yard games, and nearly identical numbers as a sophomore in the FCS in 2017. That 2017 sophomore season included a fantastic performance against Baylor, his first ever FBS opponent, when he helped spark an upset, putting up 13 receptions for 192 yards and 2 TDs. The success against top opponents did not stop there, as he proved last year, putting up 6 for 120 against Syracuse, 8 for 175 and 2 touchdowns against Buffalo, and 10 receptions for 165 yards and a TD against BYU. Golden is a bigger receiver. He measures in at 6'4", 223 pounds. But for his size, he's got some decent speed with a 4.6 40, and he's quick on his feet. He's got some nice little jukes, a couple pump steps to get the undersized defender committed in one way. Then Golden is able to go the other, and he fights off any attempted arm tackles with his strength. Golden has great control. He's really good at positioning his body in regards to both the sideline and keeping a shoulder free of the defender. He uses that height of his to stay strong when DBs try to push him around, and then he makes a nice jump ball catch on contested targets. Golden's size includes strong, soft hands. He lets that ball hit his big palm and snags it smoothly rather than stabbing at the ball. Again, his positioning and control helps him make these fingertip catches. Lastly, he's tough to tackle. If he catches the ball in open field, he's going to drag a few defenders, and you need to wrap him up because he's not going to go down on arm tackles. He's got good upper body strength as well, putting up 22 bench reps. My next wide receiver is Omar Bayless of Arkansas State. He had 95 receptions, but still managed to put up an impressive 18 yards per catch. That was on the back of 1,700 receiving yards and 17 TDs, both of which would have led the country had Chase and Jefferson at LSU not had 2 additional games to surpass him. He torched an 11-win SMU squad for 135 yards and 4 TDs against Sunbelt powerhouse Troy, 200 yards and a touchdown. Against a 10-win Louisiana team, 150 yards. And even against the top 3 defense in Georgia, still managed to put up 55 yards. In the bowl game, he won MVP honors after dominating against FIU with 180 yards and a touchdown, and performed well in the bowl game the year before with nearly 130 yards. First off, as with Golden, Bayless is great with positioning. He's aware of where the sideline is and can either tap his feet in bounds or work back to the ball in sort of a back shoulder fade. As far as the defense, he's good at using his near shoulder to take on contact, keeping one side of his body free for the grab. He always seems to be in control when he's fighting downfield with the defense, and it's a smooth motion. The defenders aren't pushing him around, so he has lots of control when he's trying to catch that ball. He's a physical guy, and he can catch it over the defender. He's had a few times where he's mossed a cornerback, and he sneaks a nice little forearm in there to create separation a lot of times. Bayless has really good hands. He makes lots of acrobatic catches, and some of these shown in the video are at huge points in the game. He's got quick feet, good footwork, and he's able to throw off the defender a little bit and get open catches off of tight coverage via solid route running. Bayless isn't crazy fast, he's not a blazer, but he's still got decent agility and seems to be the type of guy that is quicker in-game and in traffic than being timed. Enough so that I feel like he can still create separation from the defender after the catch, and he's also good at finding the gaps for long gains. He runs hard when he cuts upfield, so you actually have to get good contact on him to wrap him up as well. Bayless has some shiftiness. He can make guys miss, especially one-on-one, and a lot of times he'll use the sideline to lure defenders out wide, and then once he makes a move on them, he can cut up into open space. He displays great balance, whether it's a nice hurdle against Louisiana or staying up after getting hit low, as well as absorbing contact from a bunch of guys and pile-ups and keeping his legs churning and moving forward. The last guy is probably my favorite, Tyler Johnson of Minnesota. In this class, we're talking about 7 to 8 receivers going in the first round potentially, and somehow this guy isn't getting any respect. He had 1,300 yards this year, which ranked first in the Big Ten, 7th in the country, and among the people ahead of him, 2 small school guys, 2 from LSU, who had 2 extra games, and 2 from the Big 12, which is just atrocious at defense. He also had 13 TDs and was all Big Ten, just as he was in 2018. Against the top 8 defense in Penn State passing-wise, and an undefeated team at the time, he torched them for 125 yards and a TD. Against the top 5 team in Iowa, 170 yards and a touchdown. And in his bowl game, he was MVP as he torched another top 20 passing defense in Auburn for 204 yards and 2 TDs in what was a career game for him. The year before, he still ranked top 20 and second in the Big Ten with 1,170 yards and 12 TDs, putting up another 100-yard game against Iowa, and against one of the proclaimed DBUs in Ohio State, another 100-yard game. And the year before that, despite playing just 10 games and having just 35 receptions, he eclipsed 700 yards and 7 TDs. Against Iowa, which never ranked below the top 20 in 3 games, he put up 400 yards, and also as a sophomore, he put up 106 yards and 3 TDs against Michigan State, who was a top 20 passing defense that year. Over the last 2 years, nearly half of his games, he has eclipsed 100 yards. Johnson thrives off his slants and comeback routes. He's got quick jab steps off the line, which prevent the defense from knowing where he's going. And this is important since on short routes to inside, it's hard to create space. And also since it's a short route, he has the time to dance around a little bit. He catches the ball in stride and keeps the route moving forward and then can break tackles. Other cases, when he doesn't have much space to move forward, he's got a nice little move where he'll plant his one foot and turn the opposite way while he's catching the ball as a quick and smooth turn of direction. Johnson, like the other 2 guys, does not have elite speed, and he's got a decent-sized weight to carry, but he's still quick on his feet, and you notice that for a guy that's not as fast vertically, his change of direction is very swift, doing so in a smooth and instinctual manner. He's got good balance when guys get a hand on him or try to trip him up, and according to his coaches, Johnson plays side to side just as fast as he does vertically. Johnson has good hands and hops. He was a star basketball player in high school who led his team to a state title. In addition to his route running, his biggest asset is his jump ball abilities. He makes a lot of impressive vertical grabs, and as you can see, is a physical guy who can out-jump guys and fight through contact to make the play. I think Johnson's biggest strength is his route running abilities, and this is something young NFL receivers can struggle with before they could get by on less crisp routes based on athleticism and speed against lower level competition. But they struggle to create separation against NFL DBs. Johnson is perhaps best when pressed with those jabs I talked about earlier, creating hesitation in the DB and getting just a little extra space off the line. His ability to plant hard in the ground enables the easy change of direction already discussed, and more separation, and Johnson does not need much space with his ability to catch over guys. His plant also enables him to work back to the ball. This route is the perfect example of everything. He's pressed off the line but creates separation early, his hard plant throws the defender back, yet he has the smarts to adjust his route as his QB scrambles. Johnson then makes a beautiful 50-50 grab on a long third down late in the game. Now for some honorable mentions, Isaiah Hodgins. He probably would have been my 6th choice. He's got good hands, finds the end zone a lot, and is a pretty big body at 6'4", 209 pounds. Antonio Gibson is one of many offensive weapons Memphis has produced or will produce into the NFL in the next couple of years. Gibson is an explosive playmaker who is kind of a hybrid receiver/running back, although he played more receiver at Memphis. He could play either in the NFL, though it seems the scouts are leaning more towards running back, and that's what he played at the Senior Bowl. Malcolm Perry is one of the more interesting players in this draft, beginning his career at Navy primarily as a receiver as well as a running back and kick returner. What's interesting about the military programs is they run on almost every single play, and Perry became the first QB ever to rush for 2,000 yards in a single season. That included 300 yards in the rivalry Army-Navy game, as well as 200 yards and a passing TD as the MVP of the Liberty Bowl. He'll play wide receiver in the NFL and may not even be drafted, but will certainly be picked up by a camp. He'll follow the same path as another star rushing QB at Navy, Keenan Reynolds, who set the all-time TD scored record for an NCAA career. Trump made an agreement last year allowing players to delay their service at military programs to pursue pro sports, so hopefully that'll provide Perry with some more opportunities. Lynn Bowden Jr. is one of the more fascinating players in this draft. In addition to a big personality, he's a speedy wide receiver who can run a 4.38 40 and led the team in yards in 2018. However, following injuries at the position, he was athletic enough to switch to QB in Week 7. He was the leader this year in receiving on the team as well as rushing with 1,500 yards and second in passing. He also returned and was the obvious winner of the Paul Hornung Award for most versatile player in the country. He rushed for 233 yards and 2 TDs in the Belk Bowl against Virginia Tech, as well as throwing the game-winning passing touchdown with 15 seconds left to win MVP. Bowden, Malcolm Perry, Tyler Johnson, Omar Bayless, and Cole McDonald all won bowl game MVPs, which you can check out their highlight videos on my channel as well. Lastly is a long list of offensive and defensive underrated players, in my opinion, that you can pause and read through if you'd like. Thank you for watching.